Welcome back to episode 30 of the Precious Metal Gents podcast. This is our year-end episode. We'll be off next week. But I love hearing people's year-end recaps, love seeing the best pickups of the year. So we thought, let's do a year-end show ourselves. Brian, we're coming to the end of the year. We'll talk about our favorites, pickups, some of our superlatives, etc. You posted something earlier this week or was it early this week or late last week on your Instagram about sort of a poll on the PCs. What came out of that? I didn't follow the results. What came out of that?
It was inspired by Drake's PC, and Perimeter Collectibles. They had story posts and questions about basically consolidation and like where like collector mindsets were essentially. And I just want to get kind of a poll for people that follow me on Instagram or would see this story. Again, it's like when you post a story, it's like it's a 24-hour time frame. And, I had 100 people, actually a little bit over 100 people vote on this. So it's really like a small sample, but I thought it would be good to get, the mentality of the people that follow me, because generally the ones that I associate with on IG are pretty prominent collectors or deep collectors. I want to see what they thought about, really buying player cards in their PC or team cards, depending on what they collect. And the question was, there's obviously a number of circumstances and outliers that affect this question overall, but I wanted to think about, what would you rather have in your PC if offered the chance at one of these three options. So the first one was only the best card of the player or the team that you collect. Can't get anything else from that player or team. Or the next 10 best cards of that player or team only. So you can't have the best one. You can't have anything less, just these 10 cards. Or would you rather super collect every card that's out of 100 or greater? So out of 100, out of 150, 500, whatever, only that, and never get more rare than out of 100. And you can have every card, base cards, whatever, of that group. So I thought it would be kind of a cool exercise to see where people, lined up in this. And it was 18% wanted only the best card of that player or team. 75% wanted the next 10 best cards. That was the main choice. And then 7% wanted to super collect every card or out of 100. I fell in the 10 best cards category. A lot of people did. I thought the results were pretty interesting. What did you think when you heard those results? And I'll get to my thoughts.
I'm actually surprised. So I think I did, or if I didn't, would have voted for having the next 10 best cards. But I think I would actually rather super collect 100 and greater than have the best card of a player or team if it meant I couldn't access any of the next 10 best cards. So, but irrespective of my preference there, I'm surprised that the super collect option only got 7%. I would have guessed that the next 10 best cards would have been something like 50%. And then, super collect would have been like, 35%. And then best card or player would have been like 15%, something around there. I'm just surprised because I do follow and see a ton of people who are super collectors, or they buy a lot of 100 and greater. But also, I also am thinking like your poll is aspirational, right? It's not necessarily like, what do you do currently? So I think maybe people voted with that in mind instead of what they currently do. But I was a little surprised that it got 75%. But I do agree with that. That's what I think would be for me the best blend of accessible and, cards I could find, but also cards that are sufficiently rare to kind of keep me engaged.
Yeah, I'm not going to share anybody's, their names on here, but the people that I saw that selected the 10 best cards over like the super collect option was kind of surprising to me, because I thought, like you said, I thought that they would go for that, because they're more of, they have cards that are like in the top 10 of like a player PC that they collect, but like they have a lot of other cards, like they do like color runs and they do like parallel runs and year runs and things like that. So they're kind of more like completionist mindset. So I thought for sure that they would choose the super collect option. But then when I think about it, if you would have asked me this question maybe, I don't know, like 5 years ago or something, or 4 years ago, I probably would have selected the out of 100 option and then like the super collect, because when I started really exploring like Favre cards really deep beyond like what I've already bought like as a kid, I was looking at like a really good Favre collection as like a super collection. Like you get everything, right? Like you just get a ton. I
Hmm.
think of what happens when you start exploring players and teams and sets and stuff, you start to really get to like what's the best of the best. And I think like it's just like the maturity factor. And I think a lot of the people that you see on Instagram's again a very small portion of the hobby, but the people that you see on Instagram, that's kind of like a snippet of where people in our age group maybe are at, the ones at least that follow us and we follow them, and maybe they're just maturing at like the same rate as us, where you get they might have started in like that super collect mindset, then they're moving to like smaller player PCs of like the 10 best that I can get, and then the best card of that player team is like the pie in the sky thing. Like we hope that we could get there, but I would like to
Hmm.
shoot for the moon and settle in the stars type deal.
Yeah, and I like that the super collect option gives you sort of this chase from a volume element, meaning like you have to there are so many cards that it's a constant chase. I feel like I would, even though that would be enjoyable, I would probably burn out. I would limit it to numbered stuff probably still. Um, but with the next 10 best cards of a lot of players and teams, take away that top card, the next 10 still affords a pretty good chase element, both from a rarity perspective and from a cost perspective. Because, like, if we pick like a player PC of ours, or most of the collectors we know have maybe like two to three of the next best 10, or if that, maybe one or two. Like it's not that easy to get. And so I don't know any collectors out there that have all of the next 10 best cards of any one player or team. I mean, maybe there's a couple, but um, yeah, that's super interesting. I'm interested to see whether our preferences change a year from now or not.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so mail day. We'll keep this brief because I have nothing. I um, disclosed two last week: a Bagwell and a Platinum Medallion Patriot. Brian, you have one card that you got this week. What was it?
I did. It was a 2011 Ricky Weeks Superfractor, a 2011 Bowman Chrome Ricky Weeks Superfractor 101. I won that on auction a few weeks ago off of eBay. And funny enough, the shop owner, I really like, I bid on it. I saw it, I saved it. And then when I got the notification on my phone that it was like 14 minutes left to bid, I just went on there and placed a bid and didn't even look. And then I won the card. I placed a pretty big bid, so I figured I'd win it anyway. And I didn't even look who was selling it. Came to find out today when I went into sub the card with a few others that the person that was selling it on there was consigning it for people. It was actually the shop that I go to all the time. One of my friends, Jeff Price, he was actually selling it for somebody. I went back and looked. So when he saw the card that I put on the counter to sub, he's like, "You bought this from me?" I'm like, "No, I didn't, Jeff." He's like, "Yeah, you did on eBay." And he's like, "Pull up your eBay," and I pulled it up, and I was like, "Oh yeah, it's at Forever Sports." So it was a really odd interaction, but it's a really great card. It's a horizontal photo, but it's like an action shot of him, getting a hit or swinging the bat. You see like the background of the back of the catcher's head, and then him swinging it. Right now, it's going off the PSA, so I actually don't have it with me, but I had it for like a couple days. It's a really great card. Anytime there's those early 2000s Brewers superfractors, I love the Bowman stuff too, the tops as well, but mainly the Bowman. I just think they're really cool. So it's a really neat card. It's interesting because it's got like a white border. I didn't really expect that. I've never seen a 2011 Bowman Chrome Superfractor. It's got a white border kind of, and then it's got the Superfractor design is on the inside of the border on the photo. It's not on the border. So usually you see that Superfractor design on the outside as well, but this one's not. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, very unique. You had a pretty big PSA order that you dropped off today at your local shop. How many cards was that you dropped off?
Um, I think it was like 8 or something like that, but it had I sent it in the
Okay.
three of the Brewer 98 PMGs to get graded. I just wanted them slabbed because I just want that set, that team set slabbed, and then a couple Aaron Rodgers cards, Prism Gold or Optic Gold, and then a plat a 2015 totally certified mirror platinum gold Rodgers that I bought raw that I want to just get in a holder. It's probably not going to grade above an 8, but that's fine. And then the big one that I sent in, other than that week's, was I finally sent in the Antonio Freeman green PMG that's in a BGS holder, 8.5. So I've shown it to you and then many other people, and we're confirmed that the serial number is real. So I didn't crack it out. I just wanted to cross it over. I don't really care about the grade. I just wanted a PSA holder because I just hate looking at the thing in a. It's got like I get PTSD when I look at it in a BGS holder from buying a fake one
Yeah.
and then seeing that same. What is it that the 11 that sells all the time? I think
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah,
Freeman
it is.
11 that sold
PSA
like six
constantly
times.
runs on auction. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
right, right.
That was funny when we had Brendan 90s wax on, like before we started recording, first thing you did was pull up that Freeman. And you're like,
I know.
please tell me this is real. He's like, yeah, looks good to
I know.
go.
Yeah, so I'm gonna blame if it doesn't get crossed over. I'm blaming
Yeah.
Brendan.
We'll get him hold him accountable if it doesn't cross. Okay, so card of the week this week. No listener questions since we're doing year end recap. But card of the week before we get into that, I thought this one was interesting. It was a 2012 Finest Peyton Manning Superfractor, PSA 8 grade, sold on December 15th for on auction. 13,358. A little bit of a weird auction ending time. I think it was in the afternoon. It was during the daytime, I believe. Some other comps on Manning superfractors that I pulled. The 2011 Finest superfractor sold for 30,000 as a best offer on September 18th, 2024. BGS 95 Drake bought that one. 2014 Bowman Chrome superfractor for 4,750 on July 18th of this year. PSA 10 on that. I don't know if he bought that one or not. He might have. I'm just going to assume he bought all these if
Yeah,
unless told
because
otherwise.
every Manning that goes to
2008.
him is his, except the ones that we know
Yeah,
didn't go to him.
right. 2008 Topps Chrome Superfractor for 17,400 on April 30th, 2023, BGS 8.5. So, a couple of thoughts. Interestingly, so the 2011 and 2012 finest sell 3 months apart for almost 2.5x price difference. So, obviously, auction in time and the fact that it was an auction versus a best offer is going to be a lot different. With an offer, like when that 2011 went up, the urgency sets in immediately to get it. And there's going to be a little bit of a grade distinction there with the 9.5 versus the 8. Now, one thing I thought was interesting was that, so 2011 versus 2012, the biggest difference there is that Manning switches uniforms. So in the 2011 set, he's in the Colts uniform. 2012 set, he's in the Broncos uniform. How much that played into it, I don't know. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, and also the 2011 and 2010 sets. They're kind of buoyed by the mosaic refractor, right? And then it's kind of like similar, like the '05 and '06 being buoyed by the gold X fractor. So does that superfractor carry a little bit more like panache than the 2012? And then another thought I had was, does 2012 Finest also take a hit because that's first year Prism? And so it's not Manning's best one of one that year. So a lot of thoughts there to unpack. Tell me what you make of this or this sale or these sales.
I agree 100% with those. I was going to say the same thing. I think the 2012 is knocked because of the Prism sets, And then I think that the 2011 and 2010 finest, it's not that it's buoyed by the mosaic, but I think it's just the 2010 and 2011 in general are just really popular finest sets. The design is
Mm-hmm.
really popular, and it's his last finest being really popular in the 2000s and 2010s. Also, it being his last Colts card, and I think that time that it sells, and with these 101s you really can't predict them either. So like to draw correlations between all the sales, there's reasons why certain ones might sell for more, like you mentioned, but to try to draw connections between the prices is almost impossible, because it's like the moment in time, like who's seeing the auction, when it's sold, who has money available. It's a 101. Like you gotta, when a 101 goes up, you and I both know it, you gotta pony up the cash. It's really, you're not looking at comps, you're not like, you're putting your highest bid that you possibly can. If you win it, great. If you don't, then it goes for higher. So that's what I think happened with a lot of these cards, like the 2008 2014. Okay, so 2014 is not a very popular set.
Mm-hmm.
2008 actually is, but if you look
Mm-hmm.
at 2008 compared to 2011, it's Topps Chrome and Finest. Finest is a more popular set. I mean, you could kind of draw a correlation there, but when you see a gap of 4,000 to like 17,000, I mean, again, these are, regardless if it's Bowman, Finest, whatever, these are still superfractors of the same player in the same like era, right? It's not like a super early one. So when you look at the 14, 11, and 12, to see that big of a discrepancy in prices, I think a lot of that comes down to just the moment in time, just the fact of
Mm-hmm.
who's able to bid on it, who has cash at the time. Obviously, a little bit of a bump is given to the 2011 and a little bit less to the 2012 because of the Prism release.
Yeah, I think that, and then also obviously it's December, so there's one less bidder maybe who went after the
Right.
card just because of the holidays or what have you. So super interesting to have three relatively large superfractors of Manning sell within a 5 month period, and all publicly. There might be
Yeah,
more.
you
I mean,
bring
there
up a
might be
good
more
point.
that.
You bring up a good point with that too, that you mentioned before, like one less bidder. People need to remember, when it's a 101, it's not like you're having a crowd of like 25 to 30 people like with a typical card that are bidding on this. We're talking probably like 2 to 3 people that are just going
Mm-hmm.
back and forth. I mean, you get to a certain threshold and it's like 2 to 3 people that are bidding on this thing. It's not a group of a bunch of people.
Right. Yeah, I agree. The Manning settled at 13,358, the final price, well before it ended. So there was no run up at the end. It just stayed there. Okay, year end superlatives. I asked for a few of these. We'll do our pickups, top pickups of the year at the end. Okay, first let's start with the good. Brian, what was your best purchase of the year and why?
The best actual purchase of the year, for a couple different reasons, was a 2014 Prism Black Finite 101 Devonte Adams, the rookie. It was the best purchase for a couple of reasons. When I think of purchase, I just think of like the price point, how I got it, what it means to my collection, that sort of thing. Not necessarily like my favorite card in my PC or even what I would consider my best, but like the overall purchase. It's important because of, I feel like I got this. It was during National. The story I've mentioned on here before. Driving to work, somebody shares a picture of it that was on eBay, um, for a lot more than what I paid. And then I had like a matter of 15 to 20 minutes to message the guy and work something out, because he was at the National setting up that morning, and there was people already talking about it and sharing messages about buying it that morning. So I had to rush and get Market Fund Your Cards to go into the National right when it opened up, run over to the guy's table and get it. I had to agree on a price with him first, because when I messaged him, he originally set a price that was more than what I thought I could get it for, what I was told that he had it stickered for. So he had it listed on eBay for much more than what he had it listed at the National for. So when I messaged a few people, including yourself, and you said, yeah, it's listed at this price at the National, I was like, great. So I just messaged the guy and said, hey, I'll take it for this price. he said that no, it's this. He said it was a different price. I'm like, no, I'm going to only pay this. Right after I said that, he's like, okay, deal. Right after he said deal, I'm like, all right, give me like 20 minutes to have somebody come pick it up at your table. I just didn't want somebody else to float over there and get it because there was a number of people. So anyway, it was just like a roundabout thing. I'm driving to work. I'm trying to message when I'm in traffic. It was just a mess. It was kind of chaotic that I even got it. The fact that I got it was amazing. And then it felt like it was like right before the run up of these finites, because now
Mm-hmm.
you look at like it's like the finite market just popped off. It was a couple big sales, and it's not so much like I'm happy because I got it because now the card I think is worth more. It's not getting sold. It's more of the fact that I got it because if I would have waited till this point, I would have never got. There's no way I'd get the card. I wouldn't pay what it's actually worth right now. It's impossible. So just all those things like purchase wise, it was a big thing. Plus, it's a huge card in my collection. I'm trying to get with that Prism Finite stuff and that really rare Prism brand. I love the Prism brand, and I just want really significant cards of the players of the Packers players from that era and just big players. And I like Devontae Adams a lot. I always have. So to get his best card, I feel is just it all goes together in one lump. Best purchase.
Really serendipitous timing because you would have gotten hammered after these. The Black Finite rookie wide receiver cards just spiked this fall. I mean, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, DeAndre Hopkins sold for 15,000 the other night. Despite that card being at the past two nationals, the guy couldn't move it, and he was asking way less than that. Like I think 13 was the OBO, It's so you probably could have had it for 9, 10 at the national. So you got it
Debo
right
Samuel just
before.
went for 9. The Debo Samuel
It's
just went for
crazy,
9,000.
yeah. And I think Josh Cardboard Chronicles has bought a lot of those, and a lot of those receivers. I think he got Michael Thomas as well. So there's like obviously there's that effect because he's a pretty like well known collector, and so people see that, and he's obviously got competition though because these cards are being bid up pretty well. So that's you got it at the right time. Mine was sort of hard to pick. Um, but I went with a card. I'll explain why. 1999 Rubies, Skybox Premium Rubies of Pedro Martinez. It was because usually I'm pretty quick to pull the trigger on a card I don't have. This was a card I did have at the time I bought the PSA. I have a PSA 6, so that's what the card was that I bought. At the time I bought the PSA 6, which was I think it was in January. I already had a BGS 9 that I had gotten the year prior at the National. But I knew it was going to have to be forever in that BGS holder because it had a soft corner. And I knew there was no way it was going to get better than like a PSA, maybe even 5. I didn't know. So I was like, all right, I'd like to find a better copy at some point. This popped up on eBay. It was $2,000 or I think it's even or best offer. But I was like, that just seemed like such a good price at the time. And so I hit bin and got it. Came in. It's in really good condition. I think better condition than the 9. Um, and what it did was it freed me up to make a trade with that BGS 9. Not a card I would have parted with otherwise, but this one came along and I just kind of went with my gut essentially. And then later on, not maybe a couple months later, a PSA 6 of the Pedro auction and it went for over 3 grand, which was kind of validating in a way to be like, okay, that was a smart move. So I looked at this sort of from a not only a collection enhancing perspective, but also a value perspective. So I thought I did pretty well there. But with a best purchase, there's always a worst purchase. So what was your worst purchase of the year?
This isn't one that most people would think would be on my list, especially a Clay Matthews card of any kind and a 2012 Prism Gold um, Clay Matthews, but it was. And there's the reason for it. I love the card. I love that set. I'm at the point right now where I've had pretty much all of his gold run. I really just found that I want the black finites of his, and I think I can get that whole run. So I've kind of shifted all my resources to get those. But anyway, with that card, when I bought it, it was the first one that appeared really publicly. I don't know ever in a while, right? So it popped up on eBay. It was a auction that was running, and I just put in a really big bid, and I was like $600, $700 over the price that I wanted at when I put the bid in. I'm like, oh man, this isn't even gonna. This is gonna maybe get to like 700 or something like that. Well, it got up to 1,500, and I was still like, when I got it, I'm like, yeah, it's a lot, but whatever. This market's getting hot, and obviously some people tried to get the cards, so I'm not that crazy. So it wasn't like best offer, so I won the card, and then I checked. I was talking to Austin Carlson Cards, and I can't remember if he shared it with me or I shared it with him. I was looking at like sales history, and all of a sudden the next day, or like the day before I won this, where nobody would have seen it, there was like a PWCC vault sale of a PSA 10 Prism Gold 2012 Prism Gold Clay Matthews, I think for like $800 or something like that. I paid 1,500 for this other one, a raw one that would not grade a 10. It was probably like, I think like an 8, maybe a 9, but probably an 8. So I'm like, what in the hell is going on? And then another one pops up on eBay. Austin won it for I think like $1,000 or something. But all these started flooding the market, and I'm just like, when I look at the price point, again, I look back, it means absolutely nothing because I sold the card for not as much as I paid. I lost a little bit, whatever. Usually when I sell cards, I do lose a little bit because I'm not selling them to really profit. I'm selling them just to get out of them, get the cash to buy another card for my collection. Then I'm changing what I'm doing. So I got a decent amount for it. It went to a collector. I'm happy, but it was just like the overall purchase. I didn't need to do that in hindsight. There's no way I could have. There's no way to tell. But looking back, if we have to pick a worse purchase, it was probably that one. Financially, it was not a very good purchase for me. Anyway, with the card anymore. So
I mean, that's not a terrible one. That's, for the most part, we've learned enough, I think, to know what we do and don't like to where we don't have like any egregious purchases because we're not really gambling on,
no,
newer players. So it's not as big a deal. For me, I made a
and I have no
couple.
problem cutting. I have no problem cutting losses and just
Yeah,
being like, yeah, I don't like this card anymore because you have to buy something to know if you don't like it, right? And I just move on. I don't
right.
really sweat it.
I was gonna say, even if you take an immediate loss, like chances are, at some point during that year, you've probably profited on cards that offsets that. So, um, yeah, I had a weird string of like purchases. I'm looking here at my Instagram, like August, September. It's like I don't know if you gamble, but if people listen gamble, it's like I was going on tilt almost, and was just kind of buying stuff that I wasn't like. I don't know why I was doing it. Like I bought a Frank Thomas molten metal titanium fusion on vacation in July, which I don't regret that. I don't think that was a bad purchase. I liked the card. I had to move it, but and then I bought a Thurman Thomas Super Rave. I've never owned a Thurman Thomas Super Rave. I kind of was doing that as a favor to Dylan DeAlpha because he was uh, needing to fund something at the time. So those are like I wouldn't have made those probably in hindsight, but I don't think they take worst purchase title. For me, worst purchase title, maybe a little odd, kind of like yours was 2010 finest mosaic refractor Calvin Johnson PSA 9 on auction back in September, I believe, and it was only maybe like $1,000 or something like that, which is not only 1,000, but it was compared to '90s cards. It's obviously that's not that bad, but it just was like a purchase that was kind of incongruent with the rest of my collection. I didn't. It, it's a cool card and that's a cool set, but it just did not fit the puzzle at all. It was the only post 2000 card I owned. I don't have it like at any point in the past like year, 2 years. It's the only post 2000 card I've really owned, and so it just never really fit anywhere. And as soon as I got it, I was like, it's a nice card, but it feels like one of those that I'm gonna have to move. I don't see myself building a Calvin Johnson PC. I don't see myself being able to hold this card like indefinitely or anything like that. So I ended up trading it or selling in a package to a buddy who buys a lot of stuff I have. So it went to a good home, which is good. But at the end of the day, I think that'd probably have to be my quote unquote worst purchase.
Yeah, I think for me it was kind of one of those where I got the Clay Matthews, and I had that one. I had the 2013 finite that I have, and I had the 2015 101 Prism Pulsar because I didn't have finite that year, but it's the 101 from the Prism set. I put them like side by side. I'm like, and I had all my golds. I'm like, do I want to just there's a chance that I could just do the straight um, Prism Black 101 run for this guy? Do I really want like the whole gold run? So I had like the gold run basically completed for the Packers. I'm like, I'd rather just go after these finites because I'd rather do the gold run for like Rodgers because it's a little bit more of a challenge. So that's when I just decided to sell it. So almost when I got it, it was like within a couple months that I knew eventually I was just going to move this. It just had to be the right time for the right price. So it was. I'm assuming it was one of those deals with you, like right when you got it, you're just kind of like, yeah, this is
Yeah,
not like
yeah, the
you know
writing
right
was on the
away.
wall.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Everybody, that happens to everybody, I think. So it's just, being able to reconcile it and accept the fact that it's okay to have that happen sometimes. You can't love every card every time you buy one. Sometimes it just looks cooler in the MC Sports card lighting than it does on your on your
I'm
own
not going to
table.
spin
So,
bullshit people and act like make a.
yeah,
I'll be honest. Like I get it, and it was really cool for like probably a week, and then I put it with all the other ones and compared it to like the 101 finites. I'm like, no, this isn't doing it. I just want to move on. Like it was.
right.
I'm not going to act like I didn't screw up with it. It's one of those things.
I mentioned earlier. So let's move on. Best trade of the year. I mentioned earlier I had bought the Pedro 99 Rubies PSA 6. I had already had a BGS 9 that I got at the 2023 National. Um, I ended up trading that BGS 9 copy and a Randy Johnson 24 karat gold, which is a PSA 6. Beautiful card. I really liked that, but I also had already kind of moved on from Johnson when I got that card. So I knew it wasn't one that I was going to hang on to. But thinking back, it's if I saw it again, it might be one I would get because he's in like the purple Diamondbacks uniform. Really cool looking card. But anyway, I moved those two cards for a 98 Pedro Precious Metal Gems and cash, which I thought was ended up being a pretty good trade. I I got the I don't certainly don't regret the trade, but having a dupe and a card of a player you don't collect for the grail of one of the grails of Pedro, I thought was a pretty good trade because I got cash with it, so I couldn't be upset that. But when I got the 98 Pedro PMG, um, like that was one I've sold because I had to, and it wasn't that hard for me to sell. I think part of it was like the uniform thing. Um, it's in the Expos uniform. It says Boston Red Sox, but one of the main reasons I like collecting some of these Pedro cards is because he's in the Red Sox uniform. And so, unlike a Manning collector who doesn't mind Colts or Broncos, for me, I don't think I can do Expos, Mets, or Phillies. Um, I think it's going to have to be exclusively Sox uniform cards. So, good trade, but in hindsight, like I don't have any, I guess, regrets about moving on from the 98 PMG. You had a bit of a more, I won't say convoluted, but a little bit more complex trade because it led to a second trade. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it was a trade for. So I had earlier this year I got the 97 red PMG Favre. It was in a PSA 6, and it had a kind of a refractor. line. If anybody listening to this has a PMG or a number of PMGs, I'm sure you have one or two that have this refractor line. It's a pretty common thing where it's like where the refractor foil overlay kind of like meets. It's not even a print line. It's like where it meets on the sheet, and sometimes it's a little bit off, and you get that refractor line. You can see it on the card, but it looks like a print line, but the refractor finish is different. It didn't bother me at first. It really still doesn't bother me that much. But when I'm looking at the card, it was one where I was like, if I ever got a chance to upgrade this, and I'm not even like a big upgrade guy, but if I ever got a chance to upgrade the card, it's a card that means so much to me in my collection. I just love that set and love that card. It means so much that if I ever had a chance to upgrade where one didn't have that line and it was a cleaner copy, I probably would. It's one of the few cards where I would upgrade. So the chance came around from Jimmy, PMG Maniac we had on this show. He's got every PMG that you can think of, and he had a BGS 8.5 farb that he was trying to sell. I told him I would actually post on some stories for him to try to sell it for him. And as I was posting on these stories, I was getting some offers and stuff, but I was like, you know what? It's in a BGS holder, so I'd have to probably cross it because I always wanted it in a PSA holder because the reds look exceptional in a PSA holder. Plus, I hate BGS. But beyond that point, it's a really clean BGS 8.5. So I figured it would be an upgrade. So I told him I would buy that. So in a roundabout way, I got that card, but I needed to get rid of this PSA 6, and I used it to kind of trade and get cash on top of it for my farv. So in the trade, I traded a friend that's in the Packers group chat with me, and he has a 99 PMG Jeff Jenkins that I needed for my team set and just for Jenkins in general. It's his only PMG. It's a great car. I've wanted it since he got it like a year ago, and he's got like multiple copies. So I'm like, I will trade you this Favre if you give me cash plus the 99 Jenkins PMG. But that card has to be in the trade, no matter what else. It could be all the rest cash made up, but that card has to come. And then he threw in a 98 Super Rave John Jaha PSA, which again, people listen to this who aren't Brewer fans couldn't care less about John Jaha Super Rave, but it's an awesome card, and it's one of the team sets I'm trying to put together. And then a 99 Essential Credentials Future out of 88 Freeman PSA 8, which helps me with completing the Essential Credentials run for him. So, and then cash on top of it. So it was a good trade because I accomplish when I do trades, I try to accomplish a number of things. Like, I don't have to get the best deal, but like, am I getting cards in return that I really, really need for my collection? Even if it's not a perfectly even trade, like if the other guy gets a little bit better deal, oh well. It's just, am I getting something back that I'm going to be happy with? Because I'd hate to do a trade and give away a card that I really, really love and then get stuff back that I eventually like don't want to keep. All of the cards that I got in that trade, well, and then the cash on top to go get the other Favre that I'm gonna keep. Every single one of the cards I got, I'm going to keep in my collection and probably never sell. I'm not going to sell John Jaha Super Rave or the Jenkins or the Freeman or even this Favre once it crosses over. So it was just a really good well-rounded trade. It worked out for the guy traded with, Matt. He's got a Favre PMG now that he likes. It's a great card, and I'm happy with the stuff I got. So
It's nothing more satisfying than when trade values and everything line up and you can get a trade done where everybody wins. It's rare, but it can happen. Okay, last superlative. What was the coolest card you saw on Instagram? For me, it was the Jerry Rice Gem Masters 99, just because, I mean, there were a lot of contenders. So many good cards this year. But for me, I think the 99 Gem Masters is the best card of a 90s player over the 98. And so you just never see cards like that. I know Lee Junior 833 had it, the raw copy on his profiles. Like, he's posting some incredible cards, and so I had seen it, but just to kind of for it to resurface in a PSA slab, to see it sort of reset the market for 90s cards was really neat, because it showed like, I think it showed just an appreciation for these types of cards that we love. And so um, yeah, that was probably the neatest thing I saw this year. The Barry Sanders 98 was cool, but I just, I don't, I don't love that pattern. So um, probably wouldn't go that route. What was your favorite that you saw this year?
I would have probably chosen the Jerry Rice, like you said, the Gem Masters, but in a very close tie. It was the maybe a little bit ahead because it was Favre. It was the 98 essential credentials. Now 4 out of 4. Brett Favre, that at one point had the hobby buzzing because it kind of, like you said, the Jerry Rice reset the 90s market. Well, this card kind of sparked the 90s hype, if you ask me. Like, that sale kind of woke everybody up, and they started, no matter how you want to look at overspending or spending the right amount, I don't know, because we can't predict it, but like everybody started spending money on 90s cards after that sale, it seemed. I mean, people were buying 90s cards before that, but this was like, for football, this was like another level. This was
Mm-hmm.
a prominent football sale, kind of like basketball was experiencing during the Jordan run up during COVID. With football, it took a little bit longer because there were no real like Jordans in football, right? So it's taken some years for some of these bigger cards of players that were prominent in the 90s to surface, and now we're starting to see some of them surface. So it's the 4 out of 4. You got the Jerry Gem Masters, you got the 98 Gem Master, Barry Sanders. Those types of cards now selling are kind of setting the market trend for the next 5 years and beyond, just like the Jordan sales and insert sales and big Grail card sales did in the early 2020s.
Yeah, I mean yeah, I agree. It did set off sort of a chain reaction because you saw the Manning future 125, saw the Marino now out of 8 went for 108. Jerry Rice, Jim Masters 190, and then obviously Waldorf posted that story with all those Gem Masters. He sold the 98 Gem Masters to, I think it was Brady Hill, so that probably was six figures. So it sort of set off like a domino effect for a lot of these high end 90s cards to come out of the woodwork too, and for us to get to just a chance to look at them, which was really neat. And obviously that Barry had sold earlier this year for 168. But yeah, just it, like you said, it brought out a lot of things, and we had talked about it just before it came out, on our show with Ryan, about it being sort of this ghost, and certainly not the jersey number would be what we would expect. But um, that was said, it was a good year, a lot of cool cards on Instagram. So I'm sure we missed some. Let's jump into our uh, main segment, if you want to call it that, our top pickups of the year. Brian has more than me just because I don't have that many cards left. So, Brian, why don't you start with give us your number 10 and your number 9, and then I'll kind of go into my top 8.
Okay. So number 10 for me is actually more than one card, but it's essentially the main one in the set. It's the 2018 Bowman Chrome PSA 10 Rainbow. So the entire rainbow is PSA 10 of Christian Yelich. And the big significance for that is that it's one of two of his first Brewers cards. It's the Heritage is technically, I guess, the first release that he had, the Heritage Superfractor, the Topps Heritage. But um, I love Bowman, and this is his one of his first cards in a Brewers uniform. So to get that entire rainbow in a PSA 10, including the Superfractor, was pretty exceptional for me. I did get the entire, when I originally bought it with the Superfractors, the entire run, and I think the green was a PSA 9. And then I talked to a guy on Instagram who actually had the PSA 10 version of the green, and he basically gifted it to me. He's like, send me some Brewers card. I sent him some like Ben Sheets refractors and stuff that he liked, but it was really generous. So it was good to get that. Yeah, I think it was Slab Stocks Aaron or something, the guy who
Yeah,
runs
yeah,
a
yeah.
Slab
He's a
Stock.
nice
So
guy.
I think
Yeah.
he was, yeah, he's a great guy. So he collects Yelich. He actually has the Yelich Superfractor heritage, so technically the first Brewers card. So he's a great collector and a great guy. So that's number 10 for me. It's a number of cards, but number 9 is the 2015 Prism Black Pulsar 101 Clay Matthews. It's one of the Prism Black 101 run cards that I need. In 2015, they didn't have a finite for some reason. It's one of the handful of mess ups in print run consistency and parallel consistency that Panini has had. There's a lot of people, you can knock Panini for a number of different reasons over their time, but one thing you can't knock, in my opinion, is the consistency in parallels and runs or serial numbers. They might add more parallels, but they never change the numbering, which I love and I hated with tops. So this was the one hiccup that they had in 2015. They for some reason didn't use the finite and they tried the pulsar. It's a cool design. It's a really cool looking card. I love the 2015 set. It's one of my favorites. It's a great card, but it's his only black 101 in the Prism set from the Prism base set. So I got that. It's raw. It was an HGA card that was cracked out from my friend Jonathan Azar, and he sold it to me. So at least I have that one now in my run, and I just need a handful of others for the clay run. So it was a great pickup for me.
Can't believe you didn't keep it in that slab.
He
Keep
actually
HGA.
cracked it out.
Oh, he
He
cracked it
cracked
for.
it out.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Foolish
He was going to
move. I
submit
would
it.
have.
I bought it when he was like in the process of subbing it. So I told him I would have paid him more if it was still in the HGA holder. So he said he would send me,
Yeah, yeah.
the little thing just to prove it. So
I can't imagine your reaction if it was HGA holder with a Mike Baker sticker on it. Oh my
I
god.
that would be the ultimate. Mike Baker on an HGA slab, a 9.5 HGA with a Mike Baker.
Can't go up from there. I mean, it's pretty
Nope.
hard to beat.
Nope.
All right, so obviously I don't have my rules were basically I still have to have the card. I mean, there's a lot of cards that I had at one point this year, bought and had at one point this year, but have sold due to this consolidation. So I didn't feel like it was fair to count those. Additionally, cards that I'm actively trying to sell just kind of feels weird to include them. I sent off about 8 of them today for consignment to help with that funding. So, top 8, I'm going to. I realize my number 8 I actually don't have in hand, so I'm switching it back. 1999, the Pedro Rubies we talked about. I won't go into that too much. It's number 8 only because I already had a copy of that card, but technically I bought this card, PSA 6, in January, so it does qualify. So that would be my number 8 for the year. What's your number 8?
Number 8 for me was the 1998 PMG Cirillo, Jeff Cirillo. And it was just more added progress to the 90 overall. I guess this card represents the added progress to the 1998 Brewer PMG um, run or team set that I had, because I got the Cirillo with the Dave Nielsen at the same time, raw from Jimmy, and then right after that I got the Burnett's, and then shortly after that I got the Steve Woodard. So it was like a domino effect when I got this card. But the Cirillo is significant because he was my favorite player of that era of Brewers, and I kind of, along with those other Brewers like Burnett's, Nielsen, and all them, Jeff Cirillo is like a main, like I'll super collect him. I'll buy every good Cirillo card that I can. But anyway, with that Cirillo, I just subbed it to PSA today to get graded. It's not going to grade it. If it gets a 5 or more, it's going to be a miracle. It was definitely a common box card for like 20 years, but that's fine. It was most Brewers around that era were, but it's a great card because you never see that card around. I think a lot probably got destroyed in commons boxes or thrown out. That's why it's really tough to find, obviously, like the star players from that 98 set or any late 90s set like that or parallel. it's even harder to find the common players. People need to understand, because the common players, like if you think it's hard to find the stars, at least when you look at like a Griffey or a Frank Thomas or something, like, oh, that's a Griffey or a Frank Thomas, I might just put it in a sleeve and put it in my top loader box, right? But then if you see like, oh, it's a Jeff Cirillo or it's a Brewers who had like 100 losses at the time, I don't want that. Yeah, it's out of 50 and it looks kind of cool, but I'm gonna throw it in my commons box, my 5 row, and then they forget about it and it gets thrown out. That's what generally happens with a lot of Brewers. So needless to say, the Brewers sets in the late '90s were really tough to put together. So to get that card in general in any condition was really special.
Yeah, that's a nice card. Every time I hear Steve Woodard, I think of Steve Winwood. Bring me a higher love.
Yeah,
It should have been his entrance song, I think, when he came out onto the mound. You know. So,
yeah.
all right, so, number 7. I've got 97 red PMG here. Terrell Owens. This one I got a few months ago on auction and has survived the massive consolidation because even though this card is out of 150 and is probably replaceable, it's just really hard to part with because of how good it looks. I think it's just a really, I mean, unless I could get the green of this like that, that's one of the only ways I think I would try to part with this. I paid up for it because I really like the condition it's in. I think it looks really good. So um, even if I don't have much of an Owens PC anymore, this is definitely one that I will hang on to going forward.
You can't beat the 49ers and the 97 red PMGs. that
Yeah, I
Steve
think
Young
it's
is
just
still
a
one of
great.
it's that Steve Young is still like one of my favorite cards of all time. I'm maybe when I'm done with everything and I'm bored and I have all the cards that I want from like the current players and team that I collect, maybe I'll go out and start getting random cards that I like of other teams. And the Steve Young
Yeah,
97 that I used to have that I sold to Andy, that would be like one that I would pick up right away. I love that card.
I think the ultimate goal for would be to get whatever player it is that we like, the red and the green, and pair them up because it's obviously really hard to get the green. But I've never owned a green, and certainly would love to see a red and a green together. So I think that would be maybe a 2025 goal, but we'll talk more about that on the New Year's episode. What do you have for number 7?
27 or number 7 is the 2015 Prism Gold Aaron Rodgers. It's a PSA 10. For some reason, there's some. If you anyone listening to this doesn't collect the Prism stuff, the Prism cards are really certain years are easier to find than others. I don't know why. There's obviously like production run situations and like popularity and that sort of thing, but for some reason, the 2015s, the golds, at least for Aaron Rodgers, are really tough to find. I know a few people are trying to get his run, and they're further than me on his gold run. I'm trying to put that together as well, but they can't find the 2015. Somehow I found the 2015 with a collector who was parting out with, he was piecing out his Rodgers stuff to get more Prism basketball. He was really predominantly a Prism basketball collector, but he liked Aaron Rodgers, so he was buying golds. But then he just decided to sell them because he was getting more of the basketball cards. So he sold that and a few others. I bought as many as I could. I got the 2013 gold Rodgers from him. I came back and got the 2015 gold Rodgers from him. He had a 2014 and a 2016 that I should have bought for a really good price because I really need those cards, obviously, and they're tough to find as well. But I couldn't afford it. I was buying too much of the time. But I did get the 2015. I figured that was a good buy early on in the year. It was a PSA 10, which is again tough to find. Um, but it's a coveted card in the Rogers Prism run, and it's my favorite photo. It's at least top 3 favorite photo of his Prism run. I love the 2015 set photography, so really cool card.
All right, my number 6, 1999, Essential Credentials Now, Pedro Martinez. PSA 9. I bought this raw. It's PSA 9. Number to 23. This is number 22 out of 23. I'd actually got it with the future. I don't have the future anymore. I definitely want to get that back because they look cool together. This one came from the Roth collection, which was we talked about on the show before. But I got this out of there direct from the widow, I believe it was. And so this set I'm not crazy about generally, but I really do like the silver nows a lot. Now there are exceptions. Jerry Rice Gold, obviously that's a cool pairing. Or Terrell Owens Gold is a cool pairing, but I really like these the silver copies, and so this was one number 23. I definitely couldn't give that one up. Okay,
For me,
number
number
6.
six,
Yeah,
right?
you're
Number six,
six.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Number 6 was the 98 Essential Credentials now out of 36. Antonio Freeman in a PSA 10. That's a card I didn't buy. That was gifted to me from Andy. We talked about that in an episode earlier. Christmas came early for me from Andy. And it was just, again, it was one of those generous things that someone maybe listening to this that doesn't know Andy or has never spoken with him on Instagram or in real life doesn't understand that Andy's an extremely generous person. He posts a lot of great cards, has a lot of great cards in his collection, but more so he looks for connections with people in the hobby and other collectors to kind of just chat with. So if you ever, want to talk cards, he's always a person that's willing to talk to anybody about cards. He's not like a lot of the bigger accounts on Instagram that really won't give people the time of day if they even ask questions or message. Andy will do that. And that's one of the main reasons why Andy just, we talk a lot, you and I, with him. And, he decided to just gift me that because he pulled it out of a pack and he knew that I collected Antonio Freeman and it would mean more in my collection than his. And to some people, they can't even fathom that, like a 98 Essential Credentials of anybody, just to give it away to somebody, even if you are friends with them. Like, why would you do that? You could just sell it and just,
Yeah.
whatever. But he knows, like, when you collect and then other people collect, it means more having like the card in hand than it does like the money. So he would never sell that, and he just feels like keeping it in his collection would mean far less than if I had it in mine and the joy that I got from it, and I'll have it forever. And it's just that's what collecting cards is all about, and that's what it used to always be about, and it's kind of gone away from that, I think, more this year than maybe ever. And hopefully it gets back to that, because that's the type of stuff that keeps you collecting cards, and it's kind of like a pay it forward thing, right? At some point I'd like to be in a position where I could just, I'd find a card that I know somebody else is really looking for and I could just gift it to them. And it's like that pay it forward type of mentality, I think, is important.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I echo everything you said, and that's why for my number 5, I had this gift from Andy, which is the '97 Skybox Premium uh, rubies there of Terrell Owens. You can see it's hard to capture the effect, but if you guys have seen these, you know how cool they look. But obviously, this is PSA 8, number 250 again. A lot of people, Andy is a Niners guy. He's a Rice guy at heart. There's a lot of people who are Moss guys. Owens was my favorite of them when I was, a young teenager, just because of the attitude, the Sharpie and the sock and the popcorn, all that stuff was really cool. And so this is a card I knew that even in consolidation, I wasn't going to give up. And this was when I had been kind of asking him. I was willing to trade my Frank Thomas titanium fusion for it. And he was like, nope, I'm just going to give it to you. And you can't say no. So just incredibly kind gesture from Andy. And so we love him. What do you have for number 5 on your list?
It's a 2006 Bowman Chrome Superfractor Amon Green. It's his first Superfractor as a Packer. Well, actually, no, it's his first Bowman Chrome superfractor as a Packer. He had a 2005 finest, but I'm trying to, I paired it up with the Favre that I just recently got, the 2006 Favre. But it's a really cool card. I can't really. There's nothing more to say about it other than that it's a superfractor, an early superfractor, one of the few superfractors of Amon Green, who is another player that I collect. He's the all-time leading rusher for the Packers, a significant player for the Packers, and he's in that team lane of like or player lane of the team collection that I collect for football. So I was bugging my friend Jonathan Jazar Cards, who we're going to have on the show eventually here this next year. He's a superfractor collector, which so you would wonder like why would he get rid of that superfractor? But he's more of like a 2010s superfractor guy and like a Aaron Rodgers and that era. So he was never like he didn't grow up with the Amon Green era of Packers and even Favre. So he was more willing to part with that. And when he needed to sell it to fund a different Aaron Rodgers that he was getting, I believe at the time, he reached out to me and he gave me one shot. He's like, "This is my price. I know you've been bugging me about it. Take it or leave it because I have a lot of other people that want it. And I want to sell it to you if I can." And I just took his price because it was fair. So, and he's a great guy. I've known him for a long time now collecting. So it's sentimental in the fact that I got it from him, and I've worked like the entire year to try to get it, hounding him and irritating him, and then eventually he sold it to me. So, and it's Amon Green.
Your annoying personality paid off, is what you're saying.
I exactly it did. I mean, it does in the card collecting space. If you can annoy, but not like
Yeah,
break ties with the person, it's like a certain
right.
level. Like when you reach that red limit, you just kind of back off a little bit, and then you kind of ramp it up again,
Yeah.
and you just back off. So you have to read people.
Persistence. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. My number four, I is a Favre card, the lone Favre card on the list here. 98 Skybox Thunder Super Rave PSA 8. It's just funny. I like you and most people out there. Once it gets into my head that I'm selling a card, there's no going back. Like it's on the chopping block. It's as good as gone. So when I was doing the consolidation process recently, like this was up for sale on probably two or three stories, and then I just really thought about it and pulled it down. I was like, I shouldn't sell this. I think I can swing a couple of other cards that, maybe I'll sell the Bruce Smith 97 Rubies. Would I rather have that or this? I'd rather have this. So, I could swing a couple other cards instead and keep this. And so this was one I had bought on Golden Weekly earlier this year. And it was just like late at night and two bad influences, Andy and Justin Smith 740 Smith just were like, keep going, keep bidding. I'm like, I really don't think I should, but keep bidding. It's like, okay. And so it kept going. Finally, it stopped, but that it was I had some pretty big purchases already, and I was like, man, I'm a little, overextending a little bit, but I'm glad I kept this just because there's not. I mean, there's a couple others graded, but still, obviously numbered to 25. Uh, and I wanted to have one Favre card remaining after this, so that's my number. What was that? 4. What's your number 4?
That's just a tough card to replace too. So if you like the super rave
Yeah,
set, I mean, it's really
exactly.
tough to find again.
Yeah.
Um, so the next card, number 4 on my list, is the 2013 Topps Chrome Clay Superfractor. I posted that recently on Instagram. It was when Michael, who had the best Clay Matthews collection that I know of, or really probably anybody knows of, he was breaking down his collection and moving on to collecting something else, different cards, and that was his number one card. That was his favorite card in his collection, even over the 2009 Superfractor, the rookie that most would say is his best card technically. This one, the image, just Clay doing his after a sack doing his celebration. It's an insane card. If you haven't seen it, you can go on my page and take a look at it. But that year, the gold just really stands out. Everything aesthetically, it's like the perfect card in my opinion. If you collect Clay Matthews, The reason beyond the fact of like how great the card is, and it's going to stay in my collection forever, and it's a big piece of it. It's more so like the way I got it, and the fact that again, this is another one of those situations where like there's really good people and really really good collectors in the hobby. This guy who's collected Clay Matthews since like Clay Matthews cards were available to collect. He's always collected them since he started in the league. This guy's got the best collection, and when he decides to piece it out, just because I asked him politely early on, like, hey, that's a great card, and he saw the other Clay Matthews I had. If you ever decide to sell it, let me know. He remembered that, and he came back to me in order, like, hey, there's a lot of people that want this. I'm going to sell it. There's a lot of people have asked about it. You were the first one to come to me and ask about it. This is what I
Wow.
want for it. It's pretty much under what people are even offering me, but this is what I put out there. You can have it for this price if you want it. And I did that. And I was in the process of buying other cards. So I was like, damn, like it's a really good price, but like, can you give me like a little bit of time to just pay you? He's like, no problem. He could have got way more. He held the card, waited for me to pay it, and he sent it to me, and it was like, no problem. And it's unbelievable when stuff like that happens, because these are people, it really comes to greed and no greed. These people like Andy or Michael, they're not greedy. They're collectors at heart, and they know what a card means to somebody beyond the price. So it's something that's difficult for certain people to understand, but hopefully the people listening to this show and anybody that's new listening to the show can understand, like, there's more to this hobby and collecting than just cash.
Yeah, that's a great story, and that's wow, what a good gesture. If you could pay that forward, that's awesome. Number three for me, 2000 Fleer Showcase, Pedro Martinez Legacy Collection, PSA 9. Another one bought raw from that collection. Number 20, only one graded across all platforms, which is pretty incredible. But these are amazing in hand. The Favre I also got and regret selling that one. I mean, I'm glad Justin has it, but definitely one I would love to find again in the future. Gained a new appreciation for this set this year. It's just, I mean, the hologram in the middle, just a really, really clean set. So had to, that was going into this consolidation. That was like one of the immediate 4 or 5 cards I identified as absolute keepers for me. So that was my number three for the year.
For me, it was a 2006 Bowman Chrome Superfractor Favre, and it wasn't that long ago that I talked about it on this show and posted it. It pairs up well with the 2006 Bowman Chrome Superfractor Green. I got 5 Superfractors of Favre that I'm trying to get in my, top 20 that I'm buying, and that's one of the 5. So I need 4 more. So it made sense. It's my favorite looking base set, pre Prism, if that makes sense. So it's my favorite looking base set. Definitely favorite Bowman set for football. 2006 Bowman Chrome, I think, is just like the coolest looking base cards. And to have a Superfractor in that of Favre, it's exceptional. So it's just a great card. It's in a BGS 8.5 holder, I think. I can't remember. I have to look at it, but it's going to get cracked out and crossed over at the National anyway. So it's got to be that card. Anything 2006 Bowman Chrome, especially Superfractors, they got to be in a PSA slab. I think any card's got to be in PSA slab, but that specifically because of that red border, it just pops. It looks unbelievable.
You got a lot of these on this list, especially on the top 5, and I'm not going to give away the top 2, but like pretty close in time to one another, right? Like
It's
it all kind of hit. It's weird. It's weird sometimes how that happens. But this is the same for me. I look back at this list so far, like the Pedro Legacy, the Favre Super Rave, Pedro 99 credentials, all in January, February. Same with this card, my number 2. Pedro 24 Carat, another one from the collection, sensing a theme here. It's getting old, I know. This one came raw. This one's number 20 out of 24, graded at PSA 9. There's surprisingly like 4 or 5 nines, I think, for this card. But just, yeah, I mean, incredible card. Great set. It's one of the only two 24 carats I have. Well, no, I have the Patriots ones, but I have this in Bagwell left. So definitely another one I identified early that I was like, I gotta keep that. So love that card. Happy to have that one.
It's nice though when you're consolidating to get everything you got rid of to still have. I mean, you got a still a pretty solid Pedro collection. So it's. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
it's
tried to
not.
keep most of those. Yeah, I still have both my 98 essential credentials of his as well. Those were just bought the prior year. So I've been able to keep that collection mostly intact, which has been good.
It's it's really good. Number two for me was the 2014 Prism Black Finite Atoms that I mentioned earlier, and everything about it. Just I love the finites, love that card, Atoms. I guess the one other thing to add to that card is the 20. In my opinion, the 2014 Prism Black Finite is the best looking finite parallel, the best looking set for
I
the
agree.
finite parallel because it's
Yeah,
all finite in the background. It's all that mosaic pattern. I think that's also going to go down as like the go-to card for the finite parallel. And then
yeah,
to
I
have it
agree.
as a
It's
rookie of Adams, yeah,
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, 14 and then 12 probably for me. Those would be the
yep,
top two, but 14 is a definite, like, clearly the outstanding one. All right, the time has come. Best acquisitions of the year. Mine, pretty obvious. 99 Metal Universe Jeff Bagwell Gem Masters. 1 out of 1. I shared the story of this on our very first episode. If you did not hear that, you can go back and check it out. But that's it. Just, I mean, that's kind of why we collect, is to find cards like that, cards that you don't anticipate ever seeing or ever being able to get, and the circumstances under which that came available were just, I mean, you couldn't come up with that, stranger than fiction, I guess. So that's my number one for the year. That one was in this big consolidation project, like the one non-negotiable, which was like, if I get rid of this, what's the point? It's kind of like I'm just trading one unattainable for another in a way. So that was my number one. Pretty easy decision there for me. Your number one was something you were after for a long time. What was it?
yeah. It was a 2005 Topps Chrome updates and highlights Superfractor 101 of Ryan Braun. That's his rookie card. There's I talked about this at length on the episode when I shared it. I don't remember which one it was, but it was a little while back. Chase, Wild Goose Chase cards had it for a while. It was another one of those things where I was just bothering someone long enough to the point of, where I said, just give me a number right now. If you had to sell it, and I'm going to buy it. And he just gave me a number. I just bought it. So it was it to me. I did that because I mean, someone look at it as like, why would you buy it? Why would you pay that? Or what if they found out what I paid for it? Why would you pay that for Ryan Braun? Yeah, it's not about the money. That's, in my opinion, the best Brewers card that you can have until like Jackson Churio or somebody else comes about where they're better than Ryan Braun. Ryan Braun's the second best Brewer that's ever been on the team. To me, it's not really debatable. Robin Yount's the best. This is the best card that Ryan Braun has. It's not even it's unquestioned. And I was able to acquire it. You get with these cards, you get one shot, kind of like you said with the Bagwell. It's like you get one shot at something like this, and you have to get it because if you're going to collect the guy, and they mean a lot to you, which Ryan Braun is like everything to me in my baseball collection and my team collection with the Brewers. If that comes about, like I can't let it go. So when Chase was like, "Okay, here's the number. Next month I'm going to take it to the National, and it probably is going to sell." So I'm just like, I'm getting
Mm-hmm.
it. I'm not gonna just like have it go to somebody at the National and have to track them down and beg them for it when it's even more than what I paid already. So it meant everything to my collection. It's like the one card, I said a lot of these cards in this list that I wouldn't sell, and I wouldn't sell them. They would never go in a consolidation project. But that card, that is like probably that's like it. I just out of my baseball collection, that would be the last card that I would sell in my baseball collection. It would be no point. That's my favorite baseball card that I own.
I'm looking at your list, your final list here. You had four superfractors in your top 10. You had a black Finite and a black Pulsar. So that's pretty impressive. 6 1 of 1s this year. Any parting thoughts on the year, just generally about the hobby, about your state of your collection as we wrap up here?
This was by far the most exciting year and most fun year collecting. It was like a lot of cards that I was looking for a long time came about. I made a big. I think I finally got my collection where I want it. Kind of like you, where it's been some work, but I feel like I've gotten it where I want it, and now I like know where I'm going to go beyond this. I kind of have like a game plan. I have my spreadsheets, my list of target cards, and I might get sidetracked at times and buy some stuff and then decide not to. But overall, I got like my foundation now where I didn't have that before. And I'm excited moving into the next year where I can target some of those cards on the list. So it was a good year in getting cards, and it was a good year in planning out what I want to get in the future. So it was an all around great year. I'm rejuvenated and excited for the year and years beyond. I'm not burnt out, probably because I finally got a hold of what I want to collect and keep long term. So
Yeah, that's great. It's pretty satisfying. I mean, it was a great year to see my collection develop, yours develop. A lot of our friends just changing the way they collect. A lot of the cards that we were talking about earlier that surfaced. I mean, we started this pod, about in early July, so we've been going strong for half a year now. Yeah, I mean, there's '90s cards and early 2000s cards have really, I mean, hopefully not, hopefully they stay somewhat accessible, but they're still very heavily chase worthy cards that you can't just go out and buy any old time you want. Um, but yeah, great year of collecting. I think a lot of people probably share that sentiment, and we're able to land some really nice cards. So I'll put up my, my top 8 here on my story. Hope you guys are doing the same. I haven't seen any the Christmas trees this year of cards.
yeah, the
Maybe they haven't
Christmas
been
trees have kind of
circulating
gone
yet.
away. What do you
Yeah, yeah.
beyond what you already said about your own collection? I'll put you on the spot. What do you think? What do you see for like this podcast and what you want to kind of focus on for this next year in terms of maybe guests or topics or whatnot off the top of your head? I know I'm putting you on the spot because we didn't talk about
No,
this.
yeah. I mean, I think we can. Well, we could definitely talk about it on the 2025 preview. But I like the idea of balancing this. We have a good blend, I think, of number one, highlighting guests who are uh, not like frequent flyers on other podcasts. And that's not to say that we don't bring on people who haven't been on podcasts, but I like to highlight some of these collectors that haven't gone on because maybe there's listeners out there that don't know these people exist. And so if they get some more followers that can see their collections, I think that's great. Number two, examining the sets, I think is cool. We'll do more of that in the new year. And then number three, some of the episodes we do about, just like we did the burnout last week that are kind of not necessarily dedicated to a set or a collector, but a little bit maybe more about either the psychology behind it or just collecting proclivities that we have. So I'd like to say that. I think we've agreed that we want to stay sponsor free. We had an offer for a card funding company to sponsor us. We said no because our goal is to remain as independent and impartial and independent as we can, so that my worst fear is that we get a sponsor and then uh, they do something that we need to criticize and we feel like we can't criticize them because of that. I don't want that. You don't want that. We want to be able to speak openly about a lot of these companies. Like we've spoken critically about PSA, and so if they ever came to us for a sponsorship, we just say no. Um, but I think there's a lot of room for growth, and hopefully we'll get continue to get more listeners. But if we don't, that's cool too. I like all the we've had good feedback, and I'm happy with our listener base as it is. What about from
I
you?
agree.
What do you think?
I agree 100%. You basically said everything I could. I want to reiterate the sponsorship thing. I messaged you. I was talking to you, I think, like last week or this week about it. I was really thankful that we had a conversation and we decided that we're just going to stay sponsor free and not have you know somebody sponsor this show or be kind of a honk for a certain brand because of the things that you mentioned. Because we also wanted to be able to promote different things that we use or different tools in the hobby that we use that are good, and we don't want to
Mm-hmm.
be like pigeonholed into only representing one of them. One of which the things that we talk about on this show, the brands or the tools that we talk about on this show, like Card Ladder, for example, been around for a while and it's a great brand, and we're not sponsored by them, but we use them every time we look up comps, and we love those guys, Josh and Chris. Wharf sports cards used regularly. A lot of people in the hobby use them. Um, Fund Your Cards, Mark. Obviously, I talk about him all the time. Use them, Andy's used them. Great person to work with. Like, we want to represent those brands. So just not being sponsored with them doesn't mean that we don't, you know, care about those brands. We use them. It's just that we don't want to be pigeonholed in that. I guess that's my biggest thought with what you said. We want to continue to promote different brands and different people in the hobby that do good things in the hobby, and we're always open to promoting that. And I think that's what's important here is that more people need to be more outspoken about the positives and the good things and the good things people do and the good things that companies do in this hobby, to try to build off of that. Because as we move, I've mentioned this before, as we move more into the fanatics era of collecting, even whether you might be a 90s collector and you don't even care about fanatics, regardless of whether you care about fanatics and modern at all, it does impact the hobby in general, for a number of different aspects of buying cards and marketplaces and things like that, and just overall pricing. So it's good to find things that work and good things that are exceptional and share those things with others, whether it be like a podcast, whether it be a funding service, or a particular person or people or company that does really well in the hobby. And I think moving forward, try to, if you're listening to this, look for different brands and things that you use and try to share those with people and share your knowledge of the hobby with people and try to get people to be more knowledgeable. Kind of like how the Smarter Collector and Cardi Seed, the Smart Collector content that he puts out, he kind of made that brand to try to help new collectors in that regard. And I think that stuff's really positive moving forward in the hobby.
That said, if Mike Baker or HGA is listening, we will consider a sponsorship. So please contact us.
Mike Baker, he would be probably the only one that I would consider a sponsor. Actually, because I mean, he can do no wrong, and he
Yeah,
makes a
that's
PSA
true.
10. He makes a PSA 10 better than a PSA 10
Yeah, it makes
just
it
by
a
putting
PSA
the gold
11.
sticker on
Yeah,
it.
that's right.
Essentially, yeah. So
Yeah. All right. Well, it was a good year, partner. I'm glad we started it. Thank you to everybody who is listening, who subscribe, checks out us weekly. We really appreciate it. Appreciate all the DMs, all the positive commentary, and the honest feedback as well. Hope everyone has a great Christmas, Hanukkah, holiday season, great New Year's. We're going to get a little bit of R&R as well, and we will catch you in the new year.